Hello my Gnomies and welcome back to my channel. This is Nova Gnome Creations and today we are starting our Gnome-along for the mushroom gnome. So today I'm going to be showing you guys how to make the hat, aka the top of the mushroom. For this project you're going to need red and white yarn in a worsted weight or whatever weight you prefer, and just change the hook size to go with whatever size yarn you're using. I usually recommend going down 1 or 2 sizes from the ball band recommendation for amigurumi. For me, I am using a 3.5mm hook, a darning needle, some scissors, and a stitch marker for this project. And let's hop right into it. So your first part that you're going to be doing is going to be in red. We're going to be working up the shape of the mushroom top. So we are going to start with a magic circle. And if you need more help with a magic circle, I always have linked in my description for my tutorials a slowed down version of how to do a magic circle. But once you've got your magic circle, we are just going to place 6 single crochets into the circle. Make sure you work over the tail and the circle itself, holding them together. Just your standard way of using a magic circle. And if you prefer to do the other method that is instead of the magic circle, you are more than welcome to do that, where you like chain and slip stitch. I don't do that one though, so I'm not exactly sure what you do for that. Once you have your 6 single crochets in your magic circle, we are going to tighten it up. Now, when you have single crochets in your magic circle, you don't want to pull super tight right away, or you're going to kind of lose that first stitch and not be able to get into it with your hook. So what I do is I pull it most of the way shut, and then I go ahead and get my hook into that first stitch. That way I know that I got in there, and I go ahead and put my single crochet in. Then I go ahead and I pull more tightly on my tail. So this next round is going to be an increase round. So we're going to put 2 single crochets in each stitch all the way around. And I would recommend grabbing your stitch marker and going ahead and putting it in that first single crochet that we already placed. We're going to place another single crochet in that same stitch. And then in every stitch around, we will place 2 single crochets. I highly recommend using a stitch marker, but you don't have to. It's so much easier with amigurumi if you do though, so that you know you've got your stitch counts right, you know when you get back to the beginning of the round, and then you don't necessarily have to count if you don't want to. So go ahead and place 2 single crochets into each stitch. That's going to give you a total of 12 stitches at the end of this round, aka when you get back to your stitch marker. So if you're keeping count, that's how many stitches you'll have right now. And I'm just going to keep kind of giving a little tug on that magic circle tail as we go along if I feel like I need to. The next round, round 3, is going to be just single crocheting. So 1 single crochet in each single crochet. And go ahead and replace that stitch marker. So we'll still have 12 stitches this round since we're not adding any or taking any away. We're just going to simply single crochet in every stitch. Alright, and as we're approaching our stitch marker, you should have your 12 single crochets. And we are going to place a single crochet in that first stitch and then replace our stitch marker. And for round 4, we're going to be doing single crochet increase as our repeat. So we'll do a single crochet in that first stitch, and make sure you turn your work right side out so that the magic circle tail is on the inside of your work. It's going to kind of start cupping at this point, so you'll just want to make sure that you direct it that way. And then in our second stitch, we're going to do an increase, which is 2 single crochets in the same stitch. So single crochet, increase. And that's 2 single crochets in that stitch. Whoops. All right, single crochet, just 1 in this stitch, and then 2 single crochets in this stitch, otherwise called an increase. And you're just going to alternate that all the way around until you get back to your stitch marker again. And at the end of this round, we will have 18 stitches if you are keeping count. So we're going to go ahead and do an increase. So single crochet and then increase all the way around. And you're going to end on an increase. So anytime that you're working my patterns, typically, if there's like a single crochet increase repeat or anything like that, I always do my single crochets and then my increases. So the increases you'll end on an increase. So you know you're doing it right if you end on an increase. So for round 5, we are just going to single crochet again. So you can go ahead and put some single crochets in there. Sometimes I like to do 2 and then put my stitch marker into that first one just because then I have a little bit more room. Either way, you can do it however you prefer, but this is round 5 and we are just going to single crochet around. And you're going to have 18 stitches still because we are not increasing or decreasing. We are just continuing with a straight up single crochet round this time. And the reason that we're using a 3.5 hook, if you didn't know, is to try to keep our stitches a little bit tighter so that the stuffing won't show through, or if you're not using stuffing, even just so that there aren't any little gaps. And that's why when we do amigurumi, we usually go down a few hook sizes. It'll still look cute even if you don't, but it's going to look a little more nice and tidy if you do. And you don't necessarily have to go down to a 3.5. Whatever you're capable of doing is totally fine. All right, so there's round 5, and you have 18 stitches. Moving on to round 6, we are going to go ahead and place a single crochet into that first stitch, and then we'll replace our stitch marker. We're going to be doing single crochet, increase. And that's going to be the repeat for this round. So we have 1 already. Now we're going into the next stitch and putting 1 in that one. And then in this next one, we're putting 2 single crochets because it's an increase. So single crochet, and increase. And we are going to repeat that all the way back around to our stitch marker. And as we come to the end of round 6, we are going to be putting a single crochet in that first stitch for round 7. And round 7 is going to be a repeat of single crochet, increase. So that is 3 single crochets and then an increase stitch. So we have 1, here's our second single crochet, our third single crochet, and then our increase. And that's going to be the repeat for the round. At the end of the last round, if you were keeping count, you would have 24 stitches. And at the end of this round, if you're keeping count, you will have 30 stitches. So just repeat single crochet, increase. And that's going to continue to kind of widen out the top of our mushroom. And we're going to do this a few times with just steadily increasing. So go ahead and continue all the way around to your stitch marker with your 3 single crochets and your increase. And that's round 7. So moving on to round 8, we will go ahead and pop that stitch marker out and we will put a single crochet in that stitch. And then you can go ahead and replace your stitch marker, and we are going to do 4 single crochets and then an increase for this round. So you should have 30 stitches after round 7, and at the end of this round you'll have 36. So we're just doing 4 single crochets, 1 in each stitch, and then in that 5th stitch we will do an increase, which is 2 single crochets in that same stitch. And while you work on doing your 4 single crochets and your increase back to your stitch marker, I just wanted to remind you guys that you are welcome to pause or repeat parts of the video if you need more help with that part, or there's actually a little gear icon somewhere around your screen for your video, and if you click that, you can adjust the playback speed. So if this is too fast or too slow for you, you can always adjust the playback speed and make this work for you. So go ahead and continue with your single crocheting 4 and then increase until we get back to our stitch marker. And as we get back to the stitch marker, we are ending round 8 and we should have 36 stitches. At this point, we are starting round 9 and you're going to pop out your stitch marker and place a single crochet. Then you can replace your stitch marker, and this round is going to be 5 single crochets and then an increase. So this is going to be the last round of us doing some steady increasing. So just go ahead and do the same thing we've been doing, but you're going to do 5 single crochets, 1 in each stitch. And then on that 6th single crochet, you will place an increase, which is 2 single crochets in that same stitch. And repeat that all the way around. It'll be your repeat for the round until you get back to your stitch marker. And when you get back to your stitch marker, you will have 42 stitches if you are keeping track. All right, and as you finish round 9, we are going to be moving on to round 10, and we are going to do 6 rounds of single crochet. So you're going to do round 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14, all just straight up single crochet, no increasing, no decreasing, super simple. We will still keep our 42 stitch count if you're keeping track because we're not increasing or decreasing. So just do single crochets around until you get back to your stitch marker 6 times. And now that you have gotten to round 14, we are going to move on to round 15. And we are going to do a pretty sharp increase here. So we're going to do a single crochet and replace our stitch marker. And then we're going to do an increase, and that's going to actually be our repeat for the round. So we are going to do a single crochet and then an increase, a single crochet and then an increase, a single crochet and then an increase. So 1 single crochet in 1 stitch, and then in the next stitch you'll place 2 single crochets in the same stitch. And it's going to be a pretty sharp little increase here as we flare out our mushroom cap. So go ahead and repeat single crochet increase all the way around, and you should have 42 stitches at the beginning of this round and 63 stitches at the end of this round if you are keeping track. And if you're not keeping track of your stitch count, that's totally fine. You will end the round on an increase stitch right before the stitch marker when you get back. So if you end on an increase, you'll know that you are on the right track. All right, and now that you have finished round 15 of doing your single crochet and your increase alternating, you should have 63 stitches. Now we are just going to do single crochets in every stitch all the way around. And we are going to do that once again for repeating rounds. So we're going to do 5 rounds this time. And that's going to be round 16, 17, 18, 19, and 20. And that is actually going to end what we do with our red yarn. So go ahead and do 5 rounds, which is 5 trips around back to your stitch marker of just single crocheting, and you should have 63 stitches at the end of each round because we're not increasing and we're not decreasing. And then I will meet you back and we will start working in white. Alrighty, and now that you have finished round 10, you can go ahead and pull up on your hook and give yourself a nice little loop of yarn here. And then you can go ahead and trim off your red because we are done with our red yarn. So just leaving a little bit of a tail there for you so that you can tie that to your white. And then go ahead and grab your white yarn and go ahead and give yourself a little bit of a tail so that you can use that to tie to your red. And we're just going to put the white right over our hook and pull it through that red loop that we have still. And then just pull tight on your red. And then you can go ahead and tie the white tail and the red tail together. They're going to be on the inside of your work, so you don't even need to worry about weaving them in or hiding them because you won't see them. And I'm just going to make a nice secure knot. You can double or triple tie it if you would like to. This is just the way that I like to attach colors in amigurumi. Sometimes I also will do the last loop of the last stitch. But for this particular one, I'm just doing it this way because that's the way that I thought it would work the best. So after you have attached your white, we are actually going to be chaining because we are going to do something kind of interesting to try to make what's called the stipes of the mushroom, which are like the little ridges that are underneath of the mushroom cap that are white. White for this particular mushroom. So we're going to be chaining, and we are going to chain 10 or 9, depending on how you like to do turn chains. So if you don't know what a turn chain is, it's where when you get to the top of your work and you turn back around, you single crochet into that next stitch. And it's either going to be the stitch right after your hook, like the stitch that you're basically in, or if you prefer to use a turn chain, you'll make an extra chain and then you'll skip that stitch closest to your hook and go into the one that's the second stitch from your hook. It's totally up to you. This is going to look basically the same either way. So it's really just up to what's comfortable for you and what your preference is. So if you're going to use a turn chain, then do 10 stitches. If you're not going to use a turn chain, do 9 stitches. Basically, what we're aiming for here is we want it to go roughly halfway across the opening of the mushroom. So here is with a turn chain, and then I single crocheted into the second stitch from my hook. That's what that looks like. And then I'm just single crocheting all the way down, and there will be 9 single crochets. So if you want to keep count, you can. That way you know that you do all 9 of your single crochets and you don't miss a stitch. And you're just going to single crochet all the way down until you get to the bottom. So you're going to do 8 single crochets fully. When we get down to that last single crochet, you're going to go through and pull up a loop, but don't finish the stitch just yet. All right, so here is our last stitch. We're going to go through and we're going to pull up a loop, but we're not going to yarn over and pull through like you normally would to end a single crochet. You would have these 2 stitches or these 2 loops, and you'd yarn over and you would pull through. What we're actually going to do is we're going to look at the next stitch on the red, and we are going to go through there in the back loop only. So let me show you real quick what the back loop is, just in case you're not sure. This is the whole stitch. Here is the front loop, which is the loop closest to you. And here is the back loop, which is the loop farthest from you. We are going to put our hook through that back loop and then pull up another loop. And then we're going to pull it through both. Okay? So kind of like a slip stitch, kind of like finishing our single crochet, but we're just doing it through that loop too. And then we're going to go through the back loop of the next red stitch, and we are going to do just a straight up slip stitch. So go through, pull up a loop, and then pull that loop through your current loop. After that, you're going to go ahead and turn, and you are going to go in the front loops only and single crochet your way back up in all 9 stitches. So the reason we're doing front loop onlys is because we want to kind of make a ridge on the one side of our work. Sorry for being out of frame a little bit here. We're trying to make a ridge on the one side of our work. So we're going to do front loop onlys on our way up and back loop onlys on our way back down to kind of achieve that effect. So there's your front loop, and you're just single crocheting into it. And there should be 9 single crochets. If you do a turn chain, make sure when you get to the top, you don't accidentally single crochet into that turn chain, or you're going to accidentally end up increasing how many stitches you're doing in each row every time that you single crochet into that turn chain. So you might want to keep track of the fact that you're doing 9 single crochets until you get the hang of what you're doing. So you're going to single crochet your way all the way back up in all 9 stitches, front loop only. Trying to really show you what I'm doing here. It's kind of difficult to angle, so I'm doing my best. But there's that front loop only. Make sure you're focused here, and then show you to do the single crochet. And if you need to, when you get to the end, you can always stop and count your stitches so that you know you're not accidentally adding an extra stitch into that turn chain. So I did the turn chain for these first few stitches to show you, or these first few chain rows, whatever you want to call them, rows I guess, to show you guys how it looks with the turn chain, but then I switched to doing it without a turn chain, just so you can see how that looks also. And it basically yields the same result. It looks like just slightly different. So for this stitch up here, here's a turn chain. This will be the last time I do it with a turn chain. And then working our way back down, we're going in the back loops. So a good way to remember when you're doing back loop and when you're doing front loop is just to remember we want all the ridges on one side. So if you're going into the other loop, the loop that you're leaving unworked forms a ridge. So you're just going to be doing it in the stitch that's going, or in the loop that's going to make the ridge be on the front, which happens to be the back loops on the way down. Back down to the cap, and then front loops on the way back up from the cap. And you're going to be doing 9 single crochets again. This time it's just in the back loops. But remember, when you get down to that last one, that final 9th single crochet, you're going to do it a little bit different. You're going to pull up that loop, but then you're going to go into the back loop of the next red stitch, pull your loop through, and then pull it through both of those. And then you're going to do a slip stitch. Don't worry, I know this part can be a little complicated, but I'm going to make sure I show it to you quite a few times so that you can get the hang of it. So then you're going to turn your work, and we are going to single crochet our way back up in all 9 stitches in the front loop only. And if you need to figure out where your 9 stitches are, you can always stop and count, so that you know you're not skipping any. And there's that front loop only single crochet. And we are going to repeat front loop only single crochets all the way back up. All right, and now that you have worked your way back around and you have one more stitch remaining, we are actually going to seam the sides together. So the way that we're going to do that is we are going to go into this chain that we had first made. And keep in mind that this was a chain, so it doesn't have like a front loop only and a back loop only really. But we're going to do our best to find the loops basically from the chain, and it doesn't have to be perfect, so don't worry too much about it. You're going to go through the chain and then come back through the loop on this side to start it out. Then we're going to actually do the back loop onlys on our right side because we have a back loop only, and then connect that to the chain. And we're just going to go back and forth doing that and slip stitching it through. So you put your hook through the back loop only and then through the chain, doing the best that you can with that. Doesn't have to be perfect. And then you're going to yarn over and pull through, and you're just going to pull it right through because we're doing a slip stitch. We're just moving through 2 layers basically. So through that back loop, through your chain, and feel free to use your hook to kind of scoop up a loop of the chain if that helps. And then grab your yarn and pull it all the way through everything. So pull it through the chain, through the back loop, and through the loop on your hook. So through that back loop, through the chain, and then pull that loop through everything. And you're just going to work your way down this seam, connecting it together, and it's basically going to form another ridge and, bring it all together so that it's a circle instead of being, a disjointed piece. So through that back loop, through that chain, grab the loop or grab the yarn and pull it through everything. And as you get down to the bottom, it might be a little bit harder because you're working in a smaller space. Just do the best that you can. This is going to be underneath of your mushroom cap, so don't worry too much about it. Like, if it's a little bit funky looking right here, no one's going to notice. All right, and then we're down to our last one, which this one really doesn't have much room. So what I kind of did was I used my hook to grab the yarn. And don't even really worry about it being the back loop only for this final one because you're not really going to be able to tell. But I grabbed it with my hook, and then since it was separated, it was a lot easier to get into. Pulled it through, and then since we had that one more stitch on the red down there, I went ahead and I did a slip stitch through it, and then I go ahead and cut my yarn and pull it through. If you can't get into this stitch, don't worry, it's not a big deal. You can go ahead and chain 1 now and pull up, leave yourself a good length of yarn and pull up and cut it. But here's the stitch that I'm talking about. And I wanted to get into that back loop only the best that I could. And then do a slip stitch. But I want to keep it, easy for you. So, like I said, if you can't get into that stitch, don't worry about it. I really don't think it would make a big difference, honestly, visually. I don't think it's necessary. And then go ahead and cut your yarn. So, like I said, if you didn't go into that one, go ahead and just chain 1. And if you did, go ahead and pull up on your yarn. And either way, pull up on your yarn. And then we're going to grab our darning needle or our yarn needle or our wool needle, whatever you want to call it, and go ahead and thread it onto the needle. So this one that I'm using right now is called a wool needle, and I found it on Amazon. And then I'm just stabbing into that stitch and pulling my yarn through to the inside. And since this is where we started, there's actually a tail on the other side of our beginning of our white yarn, and I went ahead and knotted those together because why not have an extra knot? It's always a good idea to have some extra security and do a little knot. So these tails are both right here. I figured why not? Why not knot? And then you have finished your mushroom stipes and your mushroom top. And if you would like to, you can trim your tails. But this is the kind of concept of what it's going to look like. This is going to be folded under because remember we did this in the back loop only, which leaves us a line leaves us kind of a seam almost. Kind of like, think about like tear along the dotted lines. Well, you kind of fold along the seamed line. And that's going to be kind of what it looks like. And it kind of replicates the white part underneath of the mushroom cap, which is called stipes. So, learned a little about mushroom anatomy. And here is what our mushroom looks like. So it kind of looks like a little hat, which is what it is for our gnome. Da 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 da. Okay, so the next part we're going to do, we are going to be using our white yarn again. Same hook, and you don't really need the stitch marker, actually. I grabbed it and then I didn't end up using it. But you're going to make a magic circle. And this is going to be showing you how to make the smaller dots that you can put on your mushroom. So make your magic circle, and then all we're going to do is put 6 single crochets into it. So really, really simple. And I'm going to show you how to make 2 different sizes of little mushroom spots. And you can kind of vary them and spread them out however you want. You can do as many or as few as you want. It's really up to you how the visual is. So go ahead and do 6 single crochets into your magic circle. And then when we pull on that magic circle tail, make sure you don't pull it super tight yet, because you want to be able to get into that first stitch. And we are just going to slip stitch into the first stitch of our round, or our row at this time, which is just the first of 6 single crochets. And then after you slip stitch, you can go ahead and pull that tail nice and tight. And then I like to chain 1 before I pull my yarn out, just so that it kind of creates a little knot. So you've got your little circle, go ahead and chain 1, and then you can cut your yarn and leave yourself a good little length tail so that you can sew this on to your mushroom. And that is how you make the smallest dot. So this is kind of what it looks like. It's super cute, super, super simple, and you can pump out a bunch of those really fast. And the larger dot is just as simple and just as quick to work up. We're going to start it the same way with a magic circle. And don't forget, if you need help with your magic circle, I have a tutorial where I just slowed it down and really explained it to you how to make a magic circle. For this one, we are going to start out by chaining 2. Because we are going to be doing double crochets, and I prefer doing chain 2s for my start of my double crochet. And then we are going to put 7 more double crochets in there, which is going to equal to be 8 double crochets, because we're counting that chain 2 as a double crochet. So go ahead and do a total of 1 chain 2 and 7 double crochets in your circle. Make sure you're working over your yarn tail and your circle. Really important for a magic circle to work right. You got to work over that little tail. And for this one, when we go to close up our circle, we don't have to worry about not closing it up tightly at first so that we don't lose that first stitch. Because with double crochets, you're not going to lose that first stitch like you would with a single crochet, where it kind of shrinks it up a lot and you can't really get into the single crochet anymore. So when you have your 8 doubles, including that chain 2 as a stitch, you can go ahead and pull your circle shut really tight. And then we are going to slip stitch into the top of our chain 2. And then go ahead and do a chain 1, and you can go ahead and cut your yarn. Make sure you leave yourself a little bit of a tail for sewing onto your mushroom cap. And then after you cut your yarn, you can go ahead and pull up on your hook and pull the yarn through, which makes a nice little knot for you to end on. And then you are ready, well, after you make a whole bunch more of them, however many you want, you are ready to sew them onto your mushroom cap. So to sew them onto your mushroom cap, real quick, I'll just show you how. You go ahead and you thread your yarn through your needle. And then you just pick a spot wherever you would like to put it. And I actually first get my tail of yarn from my magic circle and I thread that on and I just pull it right through. And that kind of just pulls it on to the spot that I want it. And then I can get a really good idea of if I like it there. It's not, secured in any way, but it gets that tail onto the inside and then I can see how it looks. And then you're just going to go ahead and thread your other piece of yarn onto your yarn needle. And then once you have your mushroom spot where you like it, you're just going to sew it onto the hat. And you can really do this in any way you want to. There's not really a wrong way to do it. You can go up through the hat and then through the spot. You can go down through the spot and then through the hat. Either way, just basically making sure that you capture some of the hat and some of the spot each time so that you're adhering them together. And you just work your way around. So I work my way around going through the red part and up into the white part until I get back to where I started. And then it's really well secured on there and looks super cute. I love the way that these little mushroom spots look. And just like that. And then once you're done doing that, you can just kind of stab your needle down into the spot. It doesn't really matter where, somewhere close by, and pull it to the inside. And then you don't see your tail at all. And then per usual, because I really like, that little extra security, I went ahead and knotted together my magic circle tail and my tail from finishing up sewing. And now it's definitely super secure, sewn all the way around and knotted. And you can trim your yarn if you would like to. And boom, that's what it looks like. So feel free to make as many of those little spots as you want and put them on there. And you are done with part 1 of our Gnome-along for our mushroom gnome. I will see you guys tomorrow for part 2. And if you liked this video, don't forget to give me a thumbs up and leave a comment. And just a little reminder, I have all sorts of yarny content. I have like 230 videos at the time of making this. Lots of yarny vlog content, tutorials, lots of gnomes. So if you want to check out any of my gnome tutorials or any of my other stuff, the description box of this video has some playlist recommendations, and I have more playlists and more videos on my page. So check it out. And until next time, stay gnomey.